Mafia, the Old Country, continued the game design defined by the first two Mafia games. This means the gameplay revolved around a gripping mob story of interesting characters and a simple cover shooter mechanic with a bit of sneaking sprinkled on top as seasoning. Where Mafia 3 tried its hand at a true open world and failed, Mafia, the Old Country rolled all of that back and eschewed unnecessary busy work designed to stretch playtime for relentlessly pushing the story forward. And that is precisely what I wanted from this title.
Sometimes there are opportunities looking in my uncle.
However, not everybody was as happy with this as I was, where most of the criticism was directed at the very light gameplay that felt rather mediocre at 2025. Although I must agree that the gameplay has not evolved much since the first Mafia in its definitive edition, I also appreciated the fact that it was very accessible and didn't require me to spend time learning a deep and complicated system with a myriad of skills and keyboard shortcuts to remember. No matter how much I played per day or week, I always knew how the game worked. As someone who cannot spend extended periods on a controller or keyboard and mouse because of RSI issues, I welcome simpler games that let me have fun in short bursts, maybe even with longer breaks in between sessions, without risking forgetting the mechanics or control scheme. Now I do concede that Hangar 13 could have added a bit more seasoning to elevate the gameplay into the modern age. At the same time, games like Warhammer 40k, Space Marine 2 also looked very simple to me after watching a couple of hours of YouTube videos, and everybody loved it. There's an additional topic for discussion connected to Mafia, the Old Country, which is about the fact that merely solid or good games can hardly succeed in today's market. A title must be great or nobody seems to be interested in investing their money. But that's a potential topic for a different day. Let's get into what Mafia, the Old Country was and why I liked it a lot.
Come on, drive!
Mafia, the Old Country followed the formula established by Mafia 1 and 2. I took control of a young man who found himself in dire straits and, by pure chance, happened to find his way into a Mafia organization. Of course, I had to start my journey doing menial tasks and slowly work myself up the family ladder to gain the trust of the Dawn. Every job introduced more and more mob duties until I was essentially the Dawn's right-hand assassin and problem solver. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows, though, as it rarely was in Mafia games. Love, rivalries and clan conflicts made my hero's life harder than he wished. I'm not going to get deeper into the story since you should experience it for yourself, even if you just watch somebody else's gameplay. I could not do the storytelling and character development enough justice at all, let alone in this short form review. It's not a particularly complex plot, but it's incredibly well done. I'd consider this par for the course for the mob genre. Just know it's so engaging that I really wanted to continue playing and find out more. It is a short game, but I still finished in just a few days, which is rare for me. It also helped that the gameplay was so accessible and entertaining, despite its flaws. Mafia was always a cover-based shooter, especially after the remake of the first series entry. The original version didn't have a cover system as we know it today, which made its combat rather clunky by modern standards. Mafia 2 fixed that, and the series went with it from there. Mafia 3 introduced stealth mechanics and takedowns, which were also present in the Old Country. Hangar 13's new mechanic for this year's mob adventure was knife duels. I think this was a good addition, despite the simple moveset. Again, quick and easy to learn to get out of the way of the cinematic storytelling. Duels were the new boss fights, and to me, this was a much better way of handling boss fights in a game like this compared to arenas and endless floods of enemies between you and the opponent. It made the conflict so much more personal, being up close and hands-on like this. But make no mistake, there were also a lot of enemies to shoot when shit hit the fan.
Hey, stop the gas, Messina! Or I'm coming down there!
During most missions, I had the option of taking the silent assassin route or brute forcing my way through a level with lead accelerators. Only very few missions required a stealthy approach when the narrative demanded it. Apart from that, I was free to choose how I wanted to tackle a mission. I enjoy game design like this. I am stealthy when given the option, and like that, messing up does not automatically fail the objective. It's just a lot louder and also fun, in a different way. One might even say that going in guns blazing was more entertaining entertaining. Mafia's enemies were blinder and dumber than Ubisoft's foes in Assassin's Creed, which made the stealth mechanics the weakest part of the combat system. It just never posed any challenge. Suppose there ever was a group of enemies, which meant 2 people. In that case, they'd usually disperse and go their separate ways after a brief interaction with each other, once I got close enough to eavesdrop on their conversation. There was never really a moment that demanded any creative problem-solving skill to break up groups. I could throw bottles or coins to distract enemies away from each other, and they'd mindlessly follow the noise and investigate obviously nothing, looking like idiots kneeling next to a broken bottle on the ground. This isn't a Mafia-specific issue though. Other games also fall into this trap. Game designers need to find a more plausible way of handling distractions. I obviously had to suspend some disbelief. It was just a game after all. But despite this glaring issue, it felt good to silently go through camps and locations and take out the enemies without raising the alarm. It just so happened that often it didn't matter because the second part of many missions turned into a shootout anyway. The writers clearly followed a formula. Mafia: The Old Country is not too far off a walking simulator or an interactive movie. Depending on your worldview, this could be seen in a derogatory way. This game had such a wonderful and detailed world that it often felt like a waste not having to do more meaningful things in it. Sure, there were collectibles and a photograph mechanic, but after the introduction of the camera, I immediately forgot about it. The game never reminded me of its existence or gave me tangible incentives to hunt down points of interest to take pictures of. From what I've heard, you couldn't even if you wanted to, because all missions lock you into an area, and straying too far off the designed path is strongly discouraged by a "get back to the mission area" countdown. I never considered this empty world an issue in the previous Mafia games. It was just a backdrop, but the Old Country is so rich and full of eye-catching buildings and ruins, yet they mean almost nothing. And buildings and locations aren't just empty silhouettes either. The world's designers added people and life to those places, and then the game just made me ride or drive by them. I would have loved a little bit more engagement with the world, not hundreds of hours more, mind you, but some engaging side content to discover to keep me entertained for an additional 5 hours maybe? Hangar 13 certainly overcorrected the mistakes of Mafia 3.
You're out of your depth, boy. This is bigger than you and me. It is.
Yet even with these shortcomings, I do not regret spending 50 euros on Mafia: The Old Country. I had too much fun, and for some reason I intend to start the game again on a harder difficulty. The gameplay loop felt good despite its flaws and simplification. The story was gripping and the characters were brought to life by an outstanding voice cast. I think the most lavish praise I can give the game is that at times it felt like Red Dead Redemption 2, especially early on when you spend a lot of time on horseback with a few other mafiosi. The general vibe, the presentation and the music were so reminiscent of Rockstar's gangster epic. I found the sound design quite immersive in general, especially on a surround system. Don Teresi's estate felt so alive with people just from the positional audio alone. The other part of the game's tech, that is, the graphics performance, was a mixed bag. It was clearly an Unreal Engine 5 game. Traversal stutter existed, although it never felt as bad as it was in Titan Quest 2 Early Access. If you desire more information on this, my Tech Topics video has more about the stuttering and other technical aspects. Link is in the video description. In summary, I can recommend this game if you're in the market for a good story and some simple fun. If you're looking for a deep and complex sandbox like Kingdom Come Deliverance, then you'd best stay clear of Mafia: The Old Country. Thank you for watching.